All right, welcome everybody. This is fine. I'm Sam.
I'm Erik.
And how are things today, Erik? Are they fine?
No.
No.
Every day is another another annal in the find out chapter of the previous 2 months.
Yeah, and I'm here for it. I do feel like obviously this is incredibly painful, but for those of us who like I think I think society at large has been sort of like devoid of consequences from the fallout of all the like drama that happens in politics, and so people get really casual with it. I think we think consequences need to be delivered for a lot of people to understand what's at stake here at this point. And I don't think there's any way to stop the consequences from being felt. My family's feeling the consequences. I don't know about your family, but
yeah, I mean, like, we're panicked about my son's like education program. He's on an IEP, not panicked, but like worried about it, and like worried about my wife does. She does like vaccine safety research and like surveillance on drugs that have been released, and so that's all a lot of FDA and NIH funding.
They're just getting rid of all the data. They're just getting rid of all the tracking. People are going to die, and no one's even going to know about it.
That's the thing. I mean, like, her group found, like, well, I forget what the name was, like fen, like whatever. Like, I forget the name of the drug, but like it was killing people, and they found the signals of it and the data that back it up, and got it pulled off the market, right? And like, so
the government doesn't do anything, does it? Right?
Doesn't do it. But that's the thing with like public health. Like, if it's working, you don't know it is.
Yeah.
Right. And like all of these things, if they're working, you don't know that it's working. You don't understand the invisible force that's like, helping bring you up, right? It's like why Elon Musk, who gets $8 million a day from the government, is saying we have to cut everything, and like no food for you, child in Africa, and like, or we don't need to have like fresh produce at schools for kids to eat, so that they can perform better at school and have a much better, higher functioning society. No, instead, we're going to have the whatever secretary go on the news and say canned vegetables are just as good. So instead of like eating fresh food, we're going to go insert plastic into our kids' brains and have them eat this like plasticized bullshit. And like, we're wondering why all of our kids have ADHD and all these like psychological problems and all these things going on. There's microplastic in your brain.
Well, you know what's funny, Erik, is that you and a very special man named RFK Jr. would probably agree on this. But RFK's solution to this seems to be
steak and shake.
Get rid of all the things that were stopping more plastics from being in the food.
No,
I don't really understand what's going on here.
Wait a second. Like, I don't want plastic in my brain.
Make our brains plastic again. I think is what make America plastic again.
Yeah, so brain plasticity is a good thing, right? Like, as they say, brain plasticity means that you're changeable and you're open to new ideas and you can learn well, right? But not bringing like new meaning, plastic in your brain.
new meaning to the word neuroplasticity.
There's a new. Oh God!
Here's a man who had a brain worm. Maybe he can put a plastic one in there to replace the old one. So
maybe it's plastic. Maybe it was one of those like lures. That this like,
oh my God, he went fishing and came home.
He went fishing and then he forgot he thought he had his drugs in the lure case.
Oh my God.
And was just like sniffing away at the heroin and like right in.
Speaking of people who have made crazy decisions, let's talk about our good friend Elon Musk.
Oh, I know he's turning out to. I mean, like. I always like I was like wondering like why the fuck would Elon Musk want to like be like in charge of government, because like literally every business person who goes into government loses money, right? Like you're thinking like,
well, he's certainly trying to make sure that he gains money out of this. I mean, he's giving himself contracts.
Oh yeah, he's definitely. I mean, like originally, like his like for his $200 million spend, he got like $21 billion in net worth, right?
Yeah, right.
And then like you see all the reasons why, like he somehow got like this $37 billion valuation. When you add debt and other stuff, it gets it back to the $44 billion valuation to raise from to save Twitter, and like it's all bullshit. Like I wonder who's going to buy into that valuation unless he's putting all the money in himself.
Nobody. It's it's
Nobody.
it's 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 just like anybody who's an intelligent investor. All of his peers, his billionaire peers, are looking at him. And I saw something recently about how there's like big accounting red flags at Tesla right now.
Oh yeah,
There, anybody
$1.4
who,
billion are missing.
yeah. So like, where are they? Well, if you like, the funny part is that we've actually seen stuff like this before, right? Like there was a guy named Sam Bankman-Fried who was this like crypto billionaire who like he's very similar to Musk in the way he operated. He was playing big in politics. He was like moving very fast, right? He sort of came from nowhere to become this huge player in the crypto space in like 2 years out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And and so he was just moving very, very fast. And moving fast in that situation, for Sam Bankman-Fried, I think is no longer alleged. I think it's proven and convicted that he was mixing money from his various businesses and using them all together interchangeably instead of keeping the assets for his various business segregated. And I'm wondering, as someone who I've wondered this, I've speculated it aloud.
Slightly simpler terms. Okay, so he got people to donate into his crypto exchange,
Yeah.
right? And like put money in, and then he took that money and then played slot machines with it in like the hedge fund world, essentially, and like kept on losing. Like had like this 24-year-old in charge of like this like billions of dollar hedge fund, and like did not make a single good bet.
But importantly, his one business was leveraged in order to create the other business, right? The assets were not segregated, right? I mean, they were that's the point. They were incestuous. And so if we look at what Elon Musk is what, the CEO of like 6 companies.
Mm-hmm.
So like, you know, I've been speculating, and I don't think it's like a far cry to wonder whether, especially as there's additional pressure building on him, and he's over leveraged in one business, whether he's not fudging and try to cover his own losses in one business with treasury from another business, because
who's gonna investigate it?
Nobody, and he's got compliant boards. He's got compliant boards on all of his businesses, right? Like they're just like, oh, Elon, whatever.
I lost
50%
of our value in Tesla, but like they're totally fine. And it's just like hilarious to watch them. Like it's like the Tesla protests are like, it's grassroots, spontaneous, and whatnot, but they're not necessarily the ones that are driving this like downward trajectory at Tesla. I mean, you saw this out of China that like they had like his biggest competitor in the battery space just developed a battery that can charge in 5 minutes for 250 miles. The like Tesla sales are going down everywhere at the same time that electric vehicle popularity is rising in China, Germany, and all these other places. Right. And that was happening before the election, right? So like, it just looks like if you think about like the worldwide business environment, he was fucking crashing already. And like he said this a couple times, like, I'm fucked if Trump doesn't win, right? So this was his only way to stay in business and not be exposed as a massive fraud. And Trump are like this. Well, they both wanted to stay out of jail.
And that's true. And if you look back at the history of Trump, that stuff that Trump said personally when he was talking about running in 2016, the reason why he ran in 2016 is because it was his only shot at avoiding bankruptcy again.
Yeah.
So again, all these people are just making leveraged plays because their businesses are failing and using the U.S. government electoral process to try to get themselves out of trouble.
They're using your tax dollars as a piggy bank in order to if Sam Bankman-Fried was in charge of the entire government, right?
Yeah.
And like cutting it and whatnot. And it's nuts, right? And like
sooner or later, and like the reason why the government exists to regulate financial markets is to like sniff out these types of issues before they become so massive and overwrought that they bring everything down. But
no, we're just going to let it get so massive and overwrought. We're going to privatize Social Security into the private market, and then the market's going to fucking crash, right? Like, I mean, they'll make a huge cash infusion, right? So it'll go up and up and up, and then everyone will start jumping in.
And then people like Trump and Musk will exit and leave us holding with the bag. And that is the plan. very clearly the plan, right? And it's not like a pretend like, oh, maybe in the future. It's like, hey, everybody, seriously, get out of the way, because the to be clear, the government auditors that they're axing and getting rid of, all the oversight, it does not prevent all that oversight does not prevent a downfall. It just sniffs it out earlier. So when they get rid of all that, we're still gonna have the downfall. It's just that we'll have it after everybody's been suckered in with no warning for the little guy. That's the
Yeah.
difference. The government financial protections are there to make sure that this stuff gets blown up before retail investors and individuals who have retirements at stake get affected. And so now, because they got rid of those people, the same thing will play out. It'll just happen in a way that we all get affected. That's all.
Yeah, and it's happening across like everything that they're doing, right? Like, it's like I don't necessarily have a problem with them like bombing like the Houthis, right, or whatever, right? But at the same time that we're doing that, we're cutting all of the CIA and our ability to like monitor what's going to happen. So we're bombing a terrorist group and not monitoring what they're talking about or doing anymore. I mean, that scares the crap out of me, right? Like, it's like, or say we're gonna like make Gaza the Riviera, and we're gonna move entire groups of people out, and like,
Yeah,
and
that'll
then
be
like,
so.
we're also gonna cut all of our intelligence, and we're gonna piss off all of our allies, so that like if they see something like this, they're not sure if they're gonna share it, and like,
They're not even our allies anymore. We don't have any allies anymore. That's over.
no, we have North Korea, we have Russia,
Russia doesn't have anything. They're like the weakest state of all the large powers.
and we're making a play for the Afrikaners in South Africa.
Great.
They're 20% of the population.
We
So
haven't
that was
talked about
great.
that. We haven't talked about that with Elon Musk yet either, right? Like how much of all of his worldview is driven by the idea of like by South African politics in a way that
By
is
apartheid?
so toxic. Yeah, like South African politics are probably the worst in the world. It's like the most toxic group of people, and the way that and especially the white grievance there. I mean, like that it is the worst out of anywhere, right? I mean, it's like makes no
Yeah.
sense. It's all about something that like is totally irrelevant to the larger human project and humanity. And so the interesting thing for me is that it that the cognitive dissonance that must be in his brain to be able to both identify as a white South African person and then also be talking about what's good for humanity on like a humanitarian level, like going to Mars and all this stuff. Like those things are in conflict. You cannot be both a like someone who buys into the experience of being like in an apartheid state and like okay with that, and then also for humanity. Like it doesn't make any sense.
Well, it's for
Because
white humanity, right?
well,
Like, but
but
it's such,
white
like, it's so obvious though. Like, I mean, like it's like all the DEI stuff that they're doing, right? Is like it's like DEI means black people, right? Like it's just like it's like they cut the Jackie Robinson page, they cut the Tuskegee fighter airmen page, like they cut all these other things that are like DEI, but like
yeah.
well, they just mean like they don't like black people, really.
Well,
Like,
or I really think that the right wingers who are in charge now really don't understand what DEI is. I
no, they
think
have
that
no idea.
I think that they think that it's like affirmative action where you're like giving certain people like advantage for job opportunities over other people, but that's not what it is. The DEI is just the result. This is my perspective. I don't know if it's the official perspective, but this is how I feel about it. I feel like the reason why DEI has happened and become a thing is because now enough people who aren't white men have received educational and career opportunities that are on par that now we have people who are winning merit-based competitions for positions that are completely merit-based and succeeding at the merit-based measures for competitions that white men would consider to be the gold standard. And so now that this is happening, that we have like a multicultural office and a multi-gender office and all these things with people who are beating white men at their own game on the merits of the way that white men would judge the merits, then we need to have like resources in place for like to make sure that cultural friction gets eased out and everybody's able to work together coherently. But I think that they think that it's affirmative action, which is not. It's actually just that there are actual people who are getting opportunities now on the merits because they've been given opportunities in the past and now are able to beat a lot of people. Like
Yeah.
it's actually a competitive workplace, but for the first time in human history right now, basically.
Yeah, I mean, like, look, the Joint Chiefs, right?
Yeah.
Like, black Air Force general who has had commands of wartime theaters and
Right.
done this,
Right.
fired, appointed by Trump, but
Yeah.
fired and let go for a 3-star general who's been a National Guardsman who's never actually held a command, right? Like, it's like, but
Yeah.
he blows Trump in like private meetings with him. So like, like it's like wears a MAGA hat as a like in uniform like officer and
Right.
does shit like that. And the military is supposed to be above all that crap, right?
Well,
And like,
I do think that there are going to be a lot of people who are able to survive this purge just by acting like they're MAGA and then not doing anything. It's just like as long as you give Trump what seems to be loyalty, like on with a mask, he's not very smart. He like doesn't figure out that you're masking. The people around him might like knife each other, right? But at a certain point, like I actually think the best model for looking at Donald Trump's leadership is like Emperor Nero. Are you familiar with this from the
yeah, of
Roman
course.
Empire? You're like,
Did a lot
you're
of
like
umbrans.
but he like Nero was extremely popular
Oh yeah,
among the like general
popular.
populace because he was actually he was like he didn't want to be an emperor. He inherited the position because it was like given to him by his dad, right? But he wanted to be an actor, and so he like was like into the grand spectacle of the Colosseum and like created a lot of spectacle that then made big promises like we're gonna get rid of taxes. I'm for the working man, like giving out bread, right? Like the bread and circuses thing came
Yeah,
from Nero, right? Right, but
Hunger
but
Games.
he right, yes, but he couldn't stomach anyone around him telling him no, and so as he came up with more and more outlandish, nonsensical things, the people who were actually in the tightest circle around him, he had to start executing them because they had to be like, "I'm sorry, sir, like we can't make your horse fly. We don't have that ability."
Yeah,
Like I'm sorry, like I'm sorry, sir, we can't you know, like have get you to live on a cloud, right? Like, but there's just
yeah,
like as he makes requests that make no sense and don't have any basis in reality, someone has to say no, and then those people get executed, and so then the circle gets smaller and smaller, and then at a certain point, there are no resources around to fight any like what the way it ended with Nero is that like he had like gotten rid of everybody competent in the government at a certain point. So then when a fire, which happens in cities, fires happen, right? Especially back in the day. When a fire happened in Rome, as like clockwork they do, they couldn't handle that one particular fire because he'd gotten rid of all the people who were supposed to fight fires. And so then he had to like flee the city and stuff, and all that because he couldn't do the basic shit anymore because he was so living in a
you
fantasy world.
fired
And I
everyone,
think that
right? Like
right,
it's like history repeats itself. Like the same thing
it's the
happens. Like it's
same
like
thing.
Chernobyl, right? Like it's
Right,
also it's like the nuclear reactor blows up and they don't do anything about it for like a month and a half because everyone's lying to Gorbachev because they don't want to get like like gulagged and like shot in the head. So they're like, oh no, we have it under control. We have it under control. Meanwhile, like radioactive plume is
yeah.
going out. Nobody knows what's going on because there's no competent people.
Well, and that's actually what's happened in China over the last 10 years, from what I've read. It's like, Xi has shot the messenger so many times that at this point he just doesn't get information. Like, apparently he didn't even know that the China like a few years ago, I think it was in 2023, the Chinese housing market locked up and was like Evergrande, the biggest
Oh yeah,
housing
like the
corporation,
market is
like
52% real
right.
estate, right? Like that's
He
no
he
way to like live.
Right. Well, apparently he didn't even know that that was happening for like a good 2 months before it, like because he just doesn't have anybody feeding him information anymore. So the state is all frozen up. So we could end up in a very similar situation with Trump, with him
Oh,
coming in.
well, it's not. We could. It's like we will. I mean, like you see it already. The only people around them are like the Pam Bondis in the world who are going out and like talking about like no president has ever been overturned by a single judge. I'm like
Are you
it
kidding
happens
me?
like
That
once a
happens routinely.
month.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
Like I
and
don't.
you can, or like Marco Rubio, who's like, like we're gonna get, we like, yes, we are gonna get Greenland. Oh, okay, okay, bro. Like, what? And like, and they can say whatever they want, but they all know. You can tell as you watch their faces when they're moving their mouths that all of them know that they're lying and faking this whole thing.
Well, it's like
And
Rubio on the couch in Zelensky world, right? Like he's like sitting there looking like he wanted to become one with the couch. It's like that Homer Simpson meme, like where it's just like melting into the bush, right? Like
the cognitive dissonance, and then like JD Vance, who's transparently like, yes, I will commit to this lie, and I'll commit so hard that finally, when the ruin comes, which I'm betting on them, by the way, I'm betting that America gets ruined. When it comes, I'll just flee to Dubai with my wife and kids, and I'll live in palaces for the rest of my life.
I know, exactly.
Like, that's their play. It's crazy.
Yeah, I'll go. Yeah, I'll live in Dubai, and we'll have like an indoor mall, and like, yeah.
Can you imagine
prostitutes for JD?
Can you imagine, like, because we both worked in government and for elected officials. Like, can you imagine being part of a political operation where the thing that you were saying is America's entering a new golden age, when really the entire time you know in your head that you're actually betting on downfall of America and hoping for it to happen for your own financial interests? Right? Like, can you imagine that? I can't imagine living with that kind of cognitive dissonance. And like, I say that as someone who has had to deal with my share of cognitive dissonance. Like the whole part, like everything to do with this political system is all about like, like to some extent compromising with yourself in order to like get some marginal progress and toward one of your long-term goals, right?
Or compromising yourself to like advocate for things that you don't exactly love, like casinos.
Yeah, and it's part of the system. It's how the system is made. So like, you could say it on purpose if you want, but it just is the way that it works, right? So so like to a certain extent it's like by a matter of degree, but I just don't know that I would be able to live knowing that everything that came out of my life was a total lie, which I've never done. Like most of the time things that come out of my mouth, even when I'm speaking publicly, are like all the way going back to when I was 22. Like I feel like almost all the time everything that came out of my mouth, I felt like it was at least marginally true. With like, maybe I felt like I was futzing a little bit around the edges, but like, like I generally believed in everything that I was doing. I just don't know that I would be able to continue on for that long under these conditions.
Well, I mean, like they all are, right? Because like the basis for getting into the MAGA coalition is saying that like the 2020 election was stolen, right? So like the basis for entry is a lie, right? And so like once you're there, like like anyone with like any sort of moral clarity or compass isn't there, right? And
right. For example, Liz Cheney, right? Like, who I never thought would be like a source of moral clarity in any way, right? Like, like here's a person who's bent over backwards to justify all kinds of things, right? But this is the line that she draws, right? Like, and that's crazy, like that we're dealing with people who are willing to just erase even lines that she's not willing to cross. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, yeah, it just goes to the whole like like the Republicans are now carnival barkers, or like they're used car salesmen. Right? Yeah. Like that's how they approach communication. Right?
This is your theory. I would love to hear. Go ahead with your theory.
Yeah. So like the theory is that like Democrats, like we like in the left, like approaches everything like a math problem, right? Like they're mathematicians. It's like, okay, we win 84% of black women, like and like we add up in these little things, and like then we get to our win number and we win, right? And like we got to change this variable, and like we got to advertise a little bit more here, and we can communicate differently here, and like then we win.
Target this, and we're gonna win by 200 votes. If our model holds up.
If our model holds up, which is all bullshit. And then like then the Republicans are like, you see this here, Fort Pinto? Like, like don't believe the explosion stories. Like, like this thing will get you across the country and back in 2 hours. And like whatever. And like they tell people what they want to hear, right? And like, like there's so much debate on the like, well, do we have to like do that? Do we have to be the ones? And like I do think that like we do need to have a reckoning about like why we lost, and like we also like the party needs to address some of those facts that like we've been too permissive. Like we haven't like prioritized the safety of the communities as much because like we're more worried about the rights of groups. And like, those are things that are really important and like make people feel like they're being heard. Right. Like if you don't talk about those things and just say, no, you're wrong, that crime seems worse right now because look at these stats and violent murder is down. Well, that doesn't like, account for the fact that every time I go to a CVS, I have to like, say the secret password, do a secret dance in order to get a pack of razor blades out of like the thing, and it's annoying. So like people see it every single day, and like it's not like the answer isn't like, well, you're wrong. Like
I wouldn't say that we need to have a reckoning about specific policy issues. I would say we need to have a reckoning, which I think you're articulating.
Yeah.
About how in touch we are with actual community members, and then making sure we're elevating the things that they care about. So if people in poor communities are telling us crime is a bigger problem for us right now than rights, then we need to listen to that, right?
Yeah.
And that is the actual thing. So it's like I am not interested in throwing people under the bus for the sake of tacking to the center, and I'm also not interested in imposing from the top down a like leftist, liberal, progressive worldview on communities if that's not what they're feeling. I'm interested in having them tell us what their priorities are, and then us serving as the vessel for whatever the hell that is. It literally doesn't matter what it is. We're gonna be there for them.
If it's I want to get the Haitians out of my community, like
Well, yeah, I mean, then maybe they should be Republicans if they want to get the Haitians out of their community, right? But like that, but my point is like the communities that we serve are the ones who actually need to be elevating issues to us and be the gut check that on our agenda, and that's where I feel like we went wrong, not necessarily with specific issues like it's just about whether or not we're listening altogether, right?
Yeah, no, I mean we're just not in the communities in the same way. Like there was a Jason Crow article in the New York Times yesterday that I thought was really good, that he talked about, when he's like multiple medals, like wartime vet, like, won a tough district in 2018. And so he spends a lot of time in these rural areas of Colorado where, it's like a very libertarian state in a lot of ways.
Yeah, they got a lot of guns.
And like they own a lot of guns and like and all these things. And these people say that like it's ever since the deplorables comment, right? Like, that was like the original sin with like a lot of these people, right? The Democrats just don't care about us. They look down on us and like and whatnot. And
or when Obama said they cling to their Bibles and their guns and all this stuff, like that was another comment that was very similar to the deplorables comment that came out. And then Mitt Romney, like 47%. Yeah, right.
And like Democrats really, I think that we really, really miss that. Like the thing about Bibles and like church and whatnot is that calling to a higher, like it's not the basic of that is like it's not all about your ego and what you want to do. There's something more powerful than you, right?
Yes.
And like that's what's important, right? And like us knocking that is not helpful. And like we had this like and like we're pushing this like super hyper individualistic society in some ways at the same time that they are, where like it's like what you can do and who you are and like like how hard you work and this like meritocracy, but the meritocracy doesn't necessarily exist, right?
No,
it's like I think that's like the great lie of our time is that like yes, you can get ahead and do things and like whatnot, but it's very rare for someone from like a poorer class to get there because it's all about who you know and what connections you have and who will bring you along, right? And some kid born in Roxbury, Mass, isn't necessarily going to have that, no matter how hard they work.
And that's the reason why you see people who make $400,000 to $500,000 a year living in Connecticut, in debt up to their eyeballs, unable to maintain their lifestyle, even though they have a really high income. Because in order to maintain that high income and continue to get ahead, they have to be in certain circles where they have access to the people who will bring them along and get them more money, right? So there's a huge amount of pressure going all the way up the pyramid to the top. So even people who earn a ton are also trapped in the same structure that we are all trapped in. We're all prisoners to this structure.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like it's hard to like get like feel sorry for someone making $400,000 a year.
I don't feel sorry for them. I'm just acknowledging that I would say that even Elon Musk is trapped in this trap, right? Like
everyone is trapped in it, right? I mean, I think that's something that basically like we don't understand that a lot of times when it's like it's like, okay, yeah, you can like go after like the rich and like the people making $250,000, but they also feel trapped. And so when you start doing that, they get reactive. Everybody feels trapped. everybody is fearful. Everybody is afraid about what the future is going to bring. We're in a moment where there is like vast uncertainty out there and people are acting in kind. And it's like, yeah, you can call them stupid or whatever, but they're not. They're not stupid.
No,
There's like,
in fact, learning the skills to, with my own hands, protect the people I care about in an environment like this, not a bad investment of my time. It will lead me to feel more confident and more able to handle all the things that come at me in this era, knowing that I've put in the work to know how I would react in an emergency situation and have the tools to do so. So like totally reasonable. And then also the thing with churches, right? Like the town square has gone away. Where are the communities?
There are none.
There are none. So
churches are still the community, right? And they become, and like, for better or worse in a lot of ways, but like, like that becomes a spiritual center in a lot of these like red states and rural areas, right?
And it makes sense. It totally makes sense. And I respect it. I respect it a lot. So yeah, so I think you're right about that, Eric.
Yeah, I think we missed that community aspect of it, right? And like, what's the calling to do better right now? And like, how can you, like, I don't know, I struggle with this in my 20s, and like, it's like, my ego tells me one thing, and like, I want to like feed my id and like what I want to do. But almost every single time I follow my ego to its natural comment of like what I want, it leads to a bad place, right? Like, it doesn't like necessarily lead to like the best decision making, like understanding other people and outcomes that are going to be beneficial for the future of my life, right?
Yeah, I made plenty of mistakes of ego myself, right? Thinking that I was acting in the right way, but it's all just a fear-based wanting to protect myself, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's I think that's what we like. All of this is fear-based and like and whatnot, and like you see it in like some of the conversation online about young men. Like I shared this meme, like they did like the clown meme about young men like being isolated and whatnot. And
is that the one? Is that the one where there's like various things that young men are seeing online, and then gradually the picture is of someone putting on more and more clown makeup?
Yeah, exactly. It's like like women are the problem, but like I hate minorities and like
I hate everybody. I've based my entire existence off of hating everybody, and then the bottom one is I'm lonely. It's like it's like, yeah, no shit, you're lonely, but also like that. The thing that meme misses is that these people are being driven into these states of feeling that way, and it's not actually up to them whether or not they're able to get out of that. So we can clown on them all we want for creating these bad situations for themselves and attracting loneliness into their life. But the correct posture, at least speaking as a man, how I would like to reach out to other men is to offer a hand out and be like, no, man, I love you. You're wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm like, okay, great. So you're making fun of all young men who are angry and feel like they've been wronged. Like, that's not going to win them back. And like the solutions that the right are offering aren't going to help them, right? Like, you're not going to get laid more because like, like
if you hate, if you like put, like, the thing that I see often is like like memes of like where people are just sharing screenshots, women sharing screenshots of all the dating profiles of men that they come across, and it's like it's men who would be otherwise like suitable candidates who are like up front in all the text of their dating profiles are like all you women suck, I hate you, blah 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 blah. It's like, well, how are you expecting to get a date like that? That's crazy, right? But also like that guy needs to feel I feel like that
he needs to feel heard.
He needs to feel heard. Hopefully not in the context of a dating experience.
Yeah, hopefully not.
I'm loading this onto men.
But he's mad about this. And he's being told by Jordan Peterson and everyone else in the media bubble that it's like feminine like wiles that are keeping him down.
Right.
Like, it's like, well, no, is it feminine wiles? I mean, I'm the father of young boys, right? And like I see like my experience in school, in elementary school and whatnot, was like recess and like having fun and like learning in class and whatnot. My kids in school, it's like you get to school at like the crack of dawn, and like you're in your ass is in your chair, and like you get 1 20-minute recess at 10 o'clock, and then you're there till 5 o'clock, like drilling numbers.
Like right now?
Yeah, that's really what it's
how
like.
old is your oldest?
20-minute recess. And so
How old
basically,
is your son? How old is your son?
my son's 11 now. And so, like, but this was an issue all throughout like school. Like, he's ADHD, blah, 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 like all the things like me.
But all kids, whether they have a diagnosis or not, are going to need more than 20 minutes of recess in a day.
Exactly. So basically, what happens is like little young boys are like bouncing off the walls. Like there's like, and like, I like there is, and but we're so focused on these tests and whatnot that we just discipline the young boys all the time, right? Like,
Right.
why are you like this? Da, 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 da. And
Making
so
them, externalizing the fault of the curriculum onto the behavior of the boys.
exactly, right? And like I see this all the time, and like so I talk to my son a lot about it, about like because he feels like he's been persecuted. I mean, he was also the kid who like that got an answer wrong and like crumpled up his paper and flipped his desk and ran away. But like in first grade, but like the like they need more activity and they need to be kids. And if you keep on disciplining them from like 6, 7, 8, 9, they're gonna get it in their head that they're a bad person, right?
Yeah. Yes,
like,
and then they start to identify with the villains. They start to identify with the villains in stories, and then they make stories around being the villain. Like the number of memes that I've seen around like identifying with Thanos and wanting to like from 2019, right? Like when the Thanos memes were everywhere, right? Or like I like just 4chan posts from back in the day where everybody's talking like get used to being the bad guy. We are the bad guys, right? Like that's striking, right? Like
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. And like, I mean, that's like I haven't scientifically researched this, but like just from like my own experience, I'm like no wonder boys are fucking pissed off, right? Like,
yeah,
and it's not, and it's like, and like two things can be true, right? Like there's a patriarchy and like and like men still dominate the top positions at everywhere, right? Like like it's men that are 80% of law partners. It's like men that are like are these, and like though women are making gains, especially at younger ages before childbearing age, like young boys see it as I'm getting screwed, right? But as they go through life, they get more and more unscrewed, but like they don't realize that. And like the answer isn't that like we need to put girls down in order to make sure boys succeed, because we need like young women are like insanely important to our society, not just because they get like, they have children, right? Like I don't know, whenever I build a team, I want a woman on it because like generally they give feedback in a way that is like different than what I see or like any of my bros, like my buddies see. And like I want that perspective as a leader and as someone who's building things. It's important for me to have women, right? But like
and also to create a culture in the team where they feel comfortable actually adding their wisdom to the group.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what all this is. But like if you're a young kid who feels like everything's been against you, you're gonna see that as like an affront to you, right?
Well, and let's be real, right? Like, like it sounds like there are a lot of compounding factors that are making this a lot worse right now. But to be clear, 19-year-old men, 20-year-old, 21-year-old men have always been not very valued in society. Like when I was a kid, like no one was
war.
right? Like younger guys just are not, like no one's into them, right? Like and that's something that everybody just has to like understand and acknowledge and be okay with. By the time you get to be like 25, 26, 27, people will start looking at you a little bit differently. You'll be useful to people. People will acknowledge you built some skills. You're part of the team. You're contributing, right? Like so, like and that is not different, right? It's not like, oh, like modern this, modern that. Like I think that's been the true for like thousands and thousands and thousands of years. But
again, who does the draft target?
Yeah. Well, right. Yeah, those are the disposable guys, right? So so anyway, I just but it does sound like things are really really bad right now, and I'm going to go ahead and just blame George Bush because of I
know, but
No
Teddy
Child
a
Left Behind.
little bit of the blame too. Unfortunately, like I love Teddy, but like he was like the main driver in the Democratic side of No Child Left Behind, and like yes, we have to have the data, and yes, we have to do all these things in order to make sure. But our kids need to have fun, and our kids need to also like our boys need to know that they're not wrong for being bad for being hyper.
And don't you think that part of the reason why this has become so stressful for public schools in this rigorous curriculum is because it was all a setup from the beginning to try to set them up to compete against charter schools and private schools in the first place, which then creates a situation. Like, I'm willing to bet that if the charter school movement had not caught fire, and if private schools were not being elevated by a whole party trying to like enact their agenda in government, that we would not see the dynamic that you're talking about today, where boys are criminalized within their own schools. I think that's a direct result, because the pressure put on public schools to like, produce results in a way that is measurable, and can compete against an investor prospectus that for like a private charter school is like, like, that's what created this, right? So I just want to say that up front, that is a factor that that actually, like, trying to make sure that, like, to increase performance as if it were a business is like one of the leading things that has created a crisis for boys right now.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, like, I do think that there is all this like a pressure, like, and there is I mean, it's a huge moneymaker. So, like, okay, why would, like, of course the private industry is like, we should privatize school. I mean, but I'm pretty sure that like Adam Smith and a bunch of others have like addressed the idea of tragedy of like not providing these things in the commons, right?
Right. I
And
mean, like, it just means that our society will cease to be competitive with other countries. We're just going to be. But if we're not maximizing the talent of people whose parents didn't have the resources to send them to private school, like,
no, it just means that anyone whose parents make less than $200,000 a year are gonna like end their education at 8th grade and like go like be mechanics in the garage, like whatever. I mean, it's not that that's a bad like job, but like go not like move on through like secondary education or whatever. Like it just like that's. I mean, like, okay, like, so like some kids don't want to go through high school, and like we want to have like
that's good.
We tried that before.
I'm not saying that everybody needs to go to college. I'm saying that everybody who wants to and has the aptitude should have the chance to go to college.
Yeah, exactly.
That's at stake right now. Is that it sounds to me like what's happening right now is a movement by Republicans, especially what's like, that's another piece of news that's happening right now. We didn't even talk about this ahead of the show as an agenda item, but Trump made an announcement, I think yesterday, that he's asking, the former wife of the WWE, Linda
McMahon,
who's now the head of the Department of Education, to shutter the agency, basically, which you can't do without, like, officially without statute, but that's what they're doing right now. So in that case, what we're going to see is just that very few people are going to have access to school, and so like, that's what makes us totally non-competitive in the world, and will make sure that we are followers in the world instead of leaders.
No, well, we don't need 80. We don't need to educate 80% of our population, and the wealthiest 10% are the ones that are going to produce all the geniuses anyway. So why would we even bother with like the poorest?
That's the attitude, but that's what's so crazy about these people.
That's exactly what they think. That's exactly what they think. I mean, like Curtis Yarvin, all that. It's like the elite are the elite for a reason, and everyone else should go pound sand basically, and live in like the techno bubbles and whatnot. And it's like it'll be I'm pretty sure that like having earning potential and whatnot for that 80% of people is what drives our economy, right? Yeah. Unless we want to be Russia, right? Like, like you can take a look at Russia, which has ended its higher education, and like they can't, as you were saying earlier, like we were talking earlier in the before the show, like they can't even operate their own oil rigs because they have nobody smart enough to do it, right?
They don't have anybody educated enough to do it. They have people who are smart enough, but those people never got an education to do it themselves, so they have to import, even run their.
They import and they pay more for it, and like it's the way it is. Like the way Russia has done a lot of things, and like I think one of my favorite stories, and I told you this earlier, was the story of the Kremlin, right? And like so, nobody in Russia was able to figure out how to build an arch, right? Like the doorways are like nice, like whatever. And like this is like technology that's been like hundreds of years old, and like in like Middle Eastern and like European and Chinese society. Yeah. But like Russia couldn't figure it out. which is pretty amazing because it's like literally a keystone, like holding it. It's like not that
Yeah.
hard, right? You're looking at an arch, like, oh, I can figure that out. Yeah, but they couldn't figure it out. Everything was post and beam, so all their doors were like 2 posts and like a beam on top, and like that's how they built their doors, right? So they imported this like an Austrian to come in, or like German, someone from Europe, and to come in and build the Kremlin and design all the arches and how it was all going to work. And they built this beautiful thing, and at the end of it, they killed him.
If they can't stomach that he knew how to do it and they didn't, right? So they're going to kill him.
Exactly. So it's just like so I know still we go around Russia and like anything that's older than like the 1600s, 1960s or whatever. It's all post and beam. All the doors are post and beam. It looks like you're going back into the Middle Ages.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, and that's really sad. I mean, the embrace of this, and I think to the extent that I'm a political operative and working in politics, I know I like it's very easy for me to tell my true north. That like parties change, politics change over time, right? And perspectives change. But I know that I always want to be on the opposite side of the political spectrum from people who believe that the rich are there for the right reason, right? Who believe that the rich are justified in making decisions for other people because like this like logical tautology of like they're there and they're like elites and therefore they're justified in being elites, right? Like that I know the thought process behind it, and I know you do too, and we've just been talking about it, but I just want to point out that is actually like the true north of what needs to be dealt with in America right now. That attitude needs to be taken as far away from any kind of lever of power as possible, and it needs to be dealt with because that's the thing that is actually stopping us right now from moving forward as a country. And I don't even need to be the political winner. I don't need the Democrats. I don't need the liberals to win. I just need people who believe that elites should be empowered because they're the ones like who are justified in being elite because of that identity. I need those people to lose because they're taking our country in a way that will end up not just hurting our country for thousands of years and putting our future underground with a gravestone on top, but um, also like affect the course of humanity in a way that is really really evil. So yeah, that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, I mean, like it's, most of these people that are like the super wealthy and like claim that they have all the answers are the exact ones that got rich by stealing everything that wasn't nailed down. And like so, like they know that they were bad actors. They screwed everyone that they possibly could on the way up, and like they're morally compromised. But like nobody wants to believe that they're like morally a bad person. So they create like this like schema around that I know everything and I'm smart, and like really what I did was come in and like murder this company and suck all the cash out of it and then walk away and like destroy, like scorched earth. And like it wasn't beneficial. It didn't do anything to help anything, but I got a lot of money out of it, so I won.
Right. I think that there among that class of people, there are like two reactions, and the people they sort of vacillate between the two, or like maybe they'll like really sit in one of two camps, and they hate each other, right? And this is where the elite, the like rich elites of the parties go. Like there's the reaction of
that's all it is. The rich Republicans and rich Democrats fighting.
right. So it's like the rich Democrats are like, I know that everything my family did is terrible, or I did is terrible, and so the guilt is racking me. So I'm gonna like put all this like at least a portion of the money that I like stole and raped and pillaged. I'm gonna like put that into trying to help people, right? That guilt side.
Yeah.
But then there are the people who reject the guilt and are like, no, I was right. And like to be clear, both of those groups of people, like it's all based on them knowing that they did evil in the world, right? Like
yeah,
it's just that one of them is trying to act publicly as if they don't acknowledge the evil, and the other one is, and so that's I think the difference.
And I mean, there are generally like decent actors and like that are like supremely wealthy, like Warren Buffett. Like I can't think of anything to like go after him on. Like
there's a guy who actually lives what like an actual life of discipline, where he bought a house when he got like semi rich in Omaha and lived there with his wife and raised his kids and like didn't like go out partying with Lambos or whatever when he got rich. He was like, you know what? I'm going to treat investing as an art form, and I'm going to get really really good at it. And that's what he
Yeah.
did, right? Like I admire that discipline. I
Yeah,
like
no, that's
that.
what it is.
That's a
It's like
capitalist
Eastern,
thing.
like control your emotions, right?
Yeah,
And like it's
that's
a
manly.
philosophy.
I admire that
And
shit.
like all the people on the right and like the authoritarians are the ones that have no control over their emotion. They're
Yeah.
like throwing their dick all over the place whenever they do anything because like I'm the big macho man and da 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 da. And it's like no, you're
No
like a
discipline.
man baby
Yeah.
who like can't understand like basic like governance or whatever, and like you think you're the best because
You got
I
away with
mean
something.
you created an online payment system like so what, you're the first one there, like you know, that's great, right?
Yeah,
Like you
the
figured.
PayPal mafia. You're talking about like Peter Thiel.
Yeah,
That's really the genesis of all our problems. Is the PayPal group. Those guys have wreaked havoc
I
in our
like
country.
Reed.
Was Reid Hoffman a member of the PayPal group?
I think he was. Was he
Wow,
just
I didn't.
LinkedIn?
No. I think you're right. I think he got to start with PayPal. Yeah.
Yeah, he definitely did. I mean, um yeah, I know. I mean, it's like the money in politics thing, right? Like a lot of like this goes back to that. Like, you know, like
Right.
what are we gonna do about the fact that Elon Musk is like saying that we should impeach judges and like go to an autocratic, a complete autocracy, and you know, he's
Well,
like anyone who says that they'll do it, he's like maxing out to their PACs and giving like hundreds of thousands of dollars to. Like our system wasn't built to deal with that, and like, yeah, there's like, you know, like I don't know, it's a whole. It's insane. Like,
yeah. Well,
it's,
we're definitely living in a bizarro world. Um, and I just think that we have to like take this time while we are like, not that we shouldn't fight back, but we should also be taking this time while we don't have any control to like figure out what the new foundation is, like figure out what it is that we actually want to build in the future once this all runs its course. Because I like you can gut as many government services as possible that would hold you accountable for financial fraud and malfeasance like Musk is doing. But in the end, the reason why those systems exist is not to like catch people. It's because it like it's because those things are gonna play out anyway, right? I think this is sort of taking it back to what we were saying at the very beginning, right? So when inevitably all of Elon Musk's businesses fail because he's way over leveraged and his appetite for risk is so high that it's to the point of irresponsibility, way past irresponsibility. It's like he's like addicted to the danger of losing everything, right? So
it's exactly
so
what it is.
right. So as long as he is like that, it is inevitable, and he doesn't get himself right. It is actually inevitable that everything he builds collapses and dies. So, like knowing that, I think that we like basically we're in two situations, right? Like keep watch on him to see if he's actually getting his emotional house in order and change his things for the better for himself. In which case, things will change. But if he doesn't, assuming he doesn't, why would he at this point, right? Then we do have time to plan what we would like to see in the world because we know that whatever he's doing will collapse. It's not, there's no way, like the universe actually works um, to to reward certain behavior. And I don't want to say it's attributable to God or whatever. Like it's just the laws of the universe do work to the reason why like so many things from the Bible, etc., are respected is because those lessons are actually lessons that people have garnered over thousands of years, wisdom of the laws of the universe and how to get rewarded by the universe versus how to get punished by the universe. And all the things, I think if you talk to any conservative who reads the Bible, they would look at what Elon Musk is doing right now and they would say, this is ungodly and against God's law. And again, not to like make this a religious thing, it's because he's going against the laws of the universe. So knowing that, we should just have confidence that the universe is going to play this out the same way that it has every time over thousands of years, and start planning what we want for the future because we will have a shot at that. But just, they're not doing this well. They're not
No,
fixing
no.
anything.
I mean, yeah, I agree that I do agree that like we need to be thinking about what the future is and building like what's a government that actually works for people, because like we've
Yeah,
gotten way away from that over the years and it's only going to get worse.
we're going to have
And
practically a blank slate to work from. I mean, we can like what do we want the perfect system look like? That's the opportunity we actually have right now.
Yeah, no, it's like, and like there's different, like the abundance movement, like I like a lot of their stuff, and like
Say more about that, because I'm not sure the audience has heard of that.
also it's the abundance movement is this idea that like, conservatives operate from a scarcity mindset. So there's like, there's only so much education and we need to cut other people off. There's only so much of this and there's not we need to cut other people off. And we should reimagine government as being like one of like, we have capability and abundance and let's go solve these problems right now. Like it should like the example that's oftentimes used is like California high-speed rail, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like every inch of it has to go through environmental review. Every inch of it has to go through like local zoning. Every inch of it. So it's like been 25, 30 years since like the original California rail bill, and it's never been built, and it's not getting it, despite billions of dollars going into it for like review and lawyers and all these other things, because like all these rules and regulations. So like, how do we actually become a country that builds things and like, and like gets these things done quickly, and realize that we have the capability to solve all these problems, right? It's not that hard, and it just seems like everything has gotten really calcified. Then like I do think that like, I mean, it's just like, you watch China build the Olympics in like a year, right? And like, we can't do that, right? Because of all the litigation and how slow everything is. And that's why people are so like, frustrated with bureaucracy.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's like 800,000 different rules about everything that you have to do, but those are there to protect us for the most part.
Yeah, because because the cost of human life, the value of a human life in the United States is really, really high, and the value of a human life in China is like nothing.
It's zero. It's zero. It's like, like building the World Cup in Dubai when like they were like thousands of people dying and like no one cared.
Yeah. They'll just import some like, indentured servant workers from the Philippines and like, whatever.
Yeah, but like that's not an answer. An answer, like, we don't need to build like a thing in a year. We do need to be able to build like a high-speed rail in like 5 to 10 years from within like two rural areas.
Yeah, and I like the framing that you're talking about between like everything is about scarcity and like reframing everything to be about abundance. That's like a really powerful thing. My question for you is, in what media universe, given that literally everything is all about cynicism, from the mainstream press to the right-wing press, which is becoming the new mainstream press, there basically is nobody. It's all nihilism and cynicism. Like I just wonder if like that type of attitude wouldn't get laughed out of the room on any, if even if someone's smart and capable, and with a big future ahead of them, who is like everyone recognizes as a star, were to champion something like that. I don't know how it would get covered in a way that isn't cynical, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. I mean, I think that I mean, I love South Park, but that nihilism killed us.
God, South Park is responsible for so much. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but like, they write good musicals. The I mean, it's like so much has come true. Like blame Canada. But
that's actually a good point. I didn't even think of that. I love South Park. I watched a ton of South Park in my life. We're both sort of like the right age group for South Park. So
I remember when I came back from freshman year of college, my friend, like, I was like smoking a bunch of weed and like in the sitting room, and he's like, "Have you ever watched this thing called South Park?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And then he put on like the Jesus Christ Santa Claus fight.
Yeah.
Which was great. And then like I had the brilliant idea at dinner the other night to show that to the family, and I forgot how inappropriate that was, like in terms of language and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I was like, I wrote it. I was like, yeah, whatever. People talk badly. Enjoy.
Yeah. Just let's put this in a box of bad words.
Don't tell mom.
Yeah.
Whatever you do.
but yeah, that was such a big cultural force that shaped sort of like I guess it was like the late Gen X, early millennial culture, and it really like I did recognize a big big shift, because I felt like all the people were sort of like slightly ahead of me were like enmeshed in this really cynical, like very skeptical media, and then like the millennial culture was just so wholesome and optimistic. That was the polls that was coming up behind me of population, and I do feel like the millennials would be a market for something that's a slightly different, more
it's millennials and boomers, actually.
Yeah.
I guess there's the research from YouGov the other day that like it's like like, like disapproval rating and like all that is highest amongst millennials and boomers. Disapproval of Trump. And then highest was among Gen X and Gen Z.
Highest support for Trump.
Yeah, which were more for Trump. And like those are the smaller generations, right? Like that are feel like a little bit left out and are sandwiched-y. Right. Yeah. And like you can see it, like Gen Z is like cares more about money than anyone else, any other generation. Like they're another me generation. And like, they want to be rich. They think you have to make $500,000, and that's why they're all like desperately to getting into crypto or trying to day trade, which 99% of people lose at, right? Like, I don't think people, they're like, I signed up for options contracts on my Fidelity app.
Yeah.
Like, I had a $200 option that I suddenly lost $10,000. How did that happen? They're like, well, it's fucking.
Give a 21-year-old access to 100x leverage and see what happens.
I know. Let's see what happens. And like people are getting ruined, right? And like and like I don't know. I mean, like, yeah, you can day trade all you want if you understand the market, and you should totally be able to. But like most people lose, and because like it's not the day. The thing about it is like I day trade every once in a while, but I tend to do swing trading and like try to buy dips and whatnot, like so basic stuff.
And but like you're not like betting you're not doing 100x leverage for your
no, I'm not doing 100x leverage, right? Like the person from the Trump administration who did 100x leverage right before the Bitcoin announcement.
Yeah. Of course, there's no corruption there, guys. It's just don't worry, guys. They're looking into Hunter Biden's IRS investigation, right? But meanwhile, people are making investments directly from their positions in government based on inside information, and no one's stopping them.
Literally no one's stopping them. Like they made $50 million on like the Bitcoin like wrap, and then sold out, and then it crashed immediately because of the tariff announcement. And like, it's like, but that's the thing. That's the thing with day trading, right? It's not that like you can be successful and you can do it, and like you can be good at it, right? And like, but the problem is that you're always going to lose to the insider traders, and that's going to get worse over the next 4 years. Worse. Yeah. And like, because you're not going to be able to time it, right? Like an algorithm on Wall Street that's right next to the servers of the market is going to.
Who's getting a call from his friend at Doge on the phone literally right now.
There's or like that. And then everything is algorithmic. It's a bot trading right now, right? So like, like you're basically trying to time when things go. It's so the little guy can't win in this situation, right? No. It's like really, 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 really hard unless you stick to basic strategies. And unless you're a genius and you know something, or you have inside information, which is like all the big
really
whales.
Lucky.
Or you're really lucky, right? And all the big whales, like like you could like I remember like finding out that this like therapeutics company Revanche had like the next Botox, and I was like, oh sweet, like I'm definitely gonna buy it. I read the Wall Street Journal article, and then like it got like denied FDA approval the next day, and I was just like,
yep.
And I was like, oh, maybe I shouldn't buy stock options from.
Based on Wall Street Journal coverage that they were planting there on purpose to try to rug pull everybody.
Exactly. Like maybe
they knew they were about to get denied. Yeah.
I was like, oh, I'm super smart. I'm reading the Wall Street Journal, like enemy territory. I know things. Yeah. And I was like, all right, maybe that wasn't something that I knew very well. And I'll go back to ETFs.
Yeah. Well, okay. So we got a few more minutes here. Why don't we talk about Chuck Schumer?
Loaded question for an operative. Look, I'm going to be different than the rest of the party, that I'm not like apoplectic that the CR went through. Yeah. What my biggest issue is with the strategy and with the communication and sort of what happened. Like, it's like Hakeem Jeffries and a bunch of House people besides Jared Golden. Screw Jared Golden, but like at the same time, like I'm glad we have him in Northern Maine. Held together, and then Schumer said that they were going to be tough on this, and then folded, right? And like there are a lot of things that are true, like in what his arguments are, like that like that basically they would have been able to shut down the courts. They would never open up the government again because like that Supreme Court has decided that the executive has complete control over what does and doesn't get funded. There's a bunch of like things that are really, 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 really bad that might actually put us in a worse position. Either way, like I was pissed on Friday when it went down, But at the same time, I saw that polling number on Saturday that came out, and it's I mean, like the network news have had higher numbers. So CBS was 48 a while ago. NBC had a poll that was 47% still supported Trump, even after all the shit that had been happening, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to me, what that showed, and that 29% of people had a popular view of the Democratic Party, and that's a lot of liberals who were pissed off too. But like to me, what that shows is we don't have the tools to win that fight right now. Like, I'm not sure Schumer is the leader that's actually going to win a shutdown fight. He's not Harry Reid, right?
No.
Like, Schumer's more of a tactician and, like, you know, good at picking Senate candidates. We've outperformed the Senate over the last couple of years, a couple cycles, I should say. But when it comes to, like, getting into a street fight, that was Reid, right? Like, he was a prize fighter. Like, when there's something that was a tough decision like this, he also went with his gut, but then he got into the trenches and fought every single like step of the way. Schumer's not that person. And so, like, I wasn't super psyched about going to war with him as our consigliere. I would have done it, and it would have been up on the grassroots. But, like, the problem is it's asymmetrical warfare, right? Like, it's an equation. Like, Republicans control, like, 60% of the media, like, that people consume, whether it be YouTube, Twitch, whatever it is. Like, those ecosystems are much more dominant right now, and it's tough to win a fight when, like, you're talking to 40% of people. And, like, how do you, and you don't have a way to expand out beyond that 40% of people that is going to galvanize people to you beyond them getting hurt by the shutdown, right? And so, like, at the end, like, okay, maybe this not like having the CR go through may have been the best case scenario. How it was strategically played was like worst case. But at the same time, I do think that other Democrats and other people are now stepping up to be more cantankerous, fisticuffy, all the old words that you can use. But, like, you know, to fight, like, Chris Murphy's been much more out there. Cory Booker's been doing a good job and been communicating directly to people. You know, you've seen it, like, you know, people knocks the Slotkin response, but she's been pretty good at talking to, like, those boomers and older people, and we're going to need all things, right? So you're seeing people start to come out of the woodwork more. They're taking more of a leadership role. And it's not just in Congress, right? Like, I still maintain that the fight is going to be in the states. And it's the people that are being affected that need to rise up and do this, and not our elected leaders in the Senate. Like, I just think the institution is, like, essentially dead.
So basically what you're saying is that Schumer is sort of taking the reputational hit for a fight that we would have lost anyway. Or, like, now everybody's going to blame him, but it was not going to end up in our favor in the first place.
I just don't think. I think it would have been really difficult for it to end up in our favor, just with the media landscape, just with, like, Democratic donors of turtling. Like, you know, like, a lot of them aren't engaging, and, like, or that's, like, these long processes, and, like, we don't have anything that's just doing shit.
We don't have,
right.
I know of no programs that are running right now to support anything.
I mean, like, Indivisible's doing things, right? Like, you know, they're doing, like, they're like a couple calls, but, like, you know, it's, like, really with, like, a super progressive base, and, like, no one's doing anything to, like, most Americans
have no connection at all to anything that right. So like, my biggest problem with Schumer in this situation is that and this is, like, I worked in the Senate for multiple tours of duty, and so I can say that this is not, like, his way of doing things is the way that the Senate has operated, right? But basically, he played his cards close to his vest for, like, weeks and weeks and weeks while he was negotiating, and like, kept up this posture like he was, like, ready to fight, but he wasn't prepared to fight. So then he, like, set it up so that everybody was disappointed needlessly.
Yeah, it didn't have to be that way,
right? And like, I guess like, I just don't know why. I don't know why he would have agreed to the CR without some kind of tangible something to bring back, or some way that he could knife them in a way that made people feel good.
Yeah.
if like I just think that like that way of like holding your cards close to your vest, it's just really high stakes, right? Because you then if you roll something out, it has to be something that people are happy with. Whereas if you say from the beginning, I don't want to fight on this, then like this is what we saw like during the healthcare fight. I remember there was this woman who was she was an Arkansas senator, Blanche Lincoln, and like I was working for Claire McCaskill at the time, and at the time all the fighting was over whether or not we were going to include a public option in our
Oh
in
yes,
our
yes,
like
yes, yes.
right.
Like, another
And Blanche
example of
Lincoln,
Democrats not doing the thing that everyone wants.
right, exactly. Everybody liked the public option, and it would never have been unpopular. Everybody would have loved it, but of course they couldn't do it, right? So, so Blanche Lincoln, thinking, okay, after triangulating against the party, this is like this bill is getting unpopular, and well, my constituents are roasting me. So she says, "I'm not for the public option,"
Yeah,
right? And 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 what happened was she then became the target of both the right and the left and a focus of lobbying for the bill because everybody realized that she was like knocking kneed and losing her cool, right?
mhm.
Whereas my boss, Claire McCaskill, just like kept quiet and let things play out. And then
Yeah.
therefore she never took the hit when things went down, right? So it's you have to like you have to
It was the
um
internal and out to external game.
right. And then when uh like when the and then look at like another example is like Susan Collins, right? So she was like wiffily waffling on during the confirmation fight um for Brett Kavanaugh, and meanwhile, uh other women Republican senators who were like the ones who were the focus of all the fire at the time, some of them were just um came out and said, like right at the beginning, I'm voting for this guy, right? So they like took themselves out of contention to be lobbied, right?
Yeah.
And like they took a hit at the beginning, right, where people were like, boo, right? But then people moved on to other targets, right? And so I like for Chuck Schumer in this situation, I think that perhaps if he had just led with, I'm going to vote for the CR. I'm going to fund like, and my colleagues can either join me or not. We're going to negotiate over the specifics, and I'm going to take a lot of Democratic concerns into the negotiating room. But I'm going to vote for this year. And if he had just done that from the beginning, then people like he would have set the bar of expectations a lot lower and sort of taken himself out of like the hot seat in a lot of ways. But now he like led people to believe that he was going to fight, and then he didn't. And that's actually
Yeah.
what's been the
That's
biggest
the
problem.
worst possible outcome, right?
Yeah.
And like, and you see it in like the interviews on like The View and like Chris Hayes and whatnot, where like they're just like attacking him and saying that you're not standing up for the American people. And I
Right.
think that the and like they're right to be angry and like and but I don't think it's just the continuing resolution. I think it's everything for the past 8 weeks. Like we've just been in disarray. We feel like I feel like there's no real clear direction in fighting all of this, which is by design on their side, on the
Yeah.
Republican side. And
But
like,
nobody's like given everybody a real serious target to hit at, right?
yeah, no, what are we actually doing here, right? And like, I mean, like, I just like, are we going to be fighting for like what can we do? Like, we're going to fight, like, scream about the Department of Education, or all these things that are going to just like hurt other people's lives, but we can't do anything about it besides in the courts. Like, or should we be thinking about like okay, like what's the actual vision for what Democrats would do, or what like is in opposition to this, and like what's like a pro governing majority and like and whatnot, and like I don't know, like I again got all pissed
The
off at
abundance
where
thing.
too when he was like less concerned about like the deportation about Khalil in that New York Times interview, or the money being going away from Colombia. Um, and like I'm just like, okay, well, that's where I'm mad at Schumer, right? Like, no, like I don't think like I am generally like pro-Israel and like and whatnot, and like them being like a Jewish state is important. But like I think that anyone who disagrees with me has an absolute right to say what they want and like and have their self heard, and going against that like no matter, like even people that I disagree with and I think their speech is deplorable and like misses out on things deserve protection and due process and like all these things that are hugely important, because what's to stop them from taking me out because they don't like what I say, right? And like, you know, they start with the Khalils and other things, and like, yeah, like, you know, there was like, you know, like, I get the anger over Israel. I do not like the way they're conducting the war. I do not like what they're doing right now in order to continue a war, in order to stay in political power. Like, you know, all these things are awful, awful, right? And like, of course, people are going to be angry about it, and they have a right to say that.
Yeah, yeah, and I just think that the biggest problem we have right now is that the people who claim to be the biggest champions of free speech in this country are actually liars about that, and they don't actually care about it. And then the
No,
people who, right, and that's a really big problem. That free speech is actually really important, and it's enforced. It's important to also recognize that free speech is not enforced by individuals; it's enforced by institutions, right? Because an individual will always be fallible, and even if they have really high personal integrity, they're gonna die at some point. So, like, you don't want to be like Elon Musk or Caesar, even. Or like Caesar was not a successful leader; he was murdered after only a few years of rule. He got nothing done, right? You want to be Charlemagne.
yeah,
Charlemagne built an empire and then built institutions around that empire and funded universities, made sure that all people within the landed gentry had access to an education. He set up a relationship with the Catholic Church that was mutually beneficial, that lasted thousands of years. He did all of these things that, like, whether you like it or not, you can say he set up things that lasted beyond his lifetime. And it's all because he made it about things that, even though he was the one pushing these things forward, he was the tip of the spear. His leadership was the focal point. It was not about him. It was about what was good for society. And so if you actually give a shit about freedom of speech, and I do, then I'm going to invest not in people and their personal leadership, but in institutions that will carry those forward and protecting those institutions against incursion.
yeah, and people misunderstand like what free speech is too. Fundamentally, I mean, they think it's like I can say whatever I want, and like, yeah, you can say whatever you want, right?
There will be
The
consequences
government
when you say
can't
that.
punish you for it.
Yeah.
Suppose, like, you know,
Yeah.
supposedly, um, but like, you know, it's other people can punish you for it, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And make
In ways
choices
that are
on that,
legal for
and
them
that's
to do.
their
Yeah.
free speech,
Yes.
right? Like, you know, like they're free to disassociate from you if they want, right?
Yeah.
And like, I think that like, no, the free speech doesn't mean everybody has to listen to you and accept what you have to say.
No, that's you imposing your speech on other people.
That's imposing. That's autocracy.
Yes.
Right. Like, and like, no. And like, but I mean, like the left has had a problem with this too. Right.
Of course.
The left, like, so I don't want to like, say it's just the right.
No, it's about the institutions have been attacked by tankies on the left, nominally left, and by right wingers. And it's important to understand that the institutions are actually the most important thing. And if they're going away, that's the thing that we need to focus on building for the future. Those are the things that
we have to rebuild our institutions.
We do not need a revolution that ends without new institutions. We do not need that. We
No.
need an institution. We need a revolution. If we're going to have a revolution, it needs to be one that ends with new institutions, or else everything we've done is a net negative for the future of all humanity.
Yeah, I mean, going back, I mean, Charlemagne. What is he known as? Charlemagne the Great.
Yeah.
Like, what are Ivan the Terrible?
Yeah.
So, like, you know, I mean, like history tends to look back on these things of what in a certain way, and it's like interesting talking about Charlemagne, because one of our conversations before the stream was about like what made Western society, right?
Yeah.
And like how did it, like, you know, for all of history, China, India, like were really like the empires, right?
They were the powerhouses of culture. They're the ones who've created the world. All of you.
The Middle East too. I mean, like the Muslim, like created algebra, created like you know, they like the things that lived on were like the things that they created and the institutions that they created. But like, how did the Muslim world like they started tearing apart their institutions and like their academia, And like, in order to be
religious fundamentalism,
a religious fundamentalist, as like not do education, and all education needs to be religion. And look at what the Middle East is doing right now. Has that worked out well for them? No. The West in the 1400s, there's this thing invented called the printing press, right? And like the printing press allowed for ideas to, like, much like YouTube and like other things, allowed for ideas to travel like lightning
Much
speed of like a week, some like horse, like as fast as a horse could go. But like people could read it, right? And so ideas spread, and then they built universities, and the universities became the center of science. And like Galileo, Copernicus, like all of these people like came out of the universities, and then they discovered navigation, and they discovered the new world, and wiped out the indigenous populations with their diseases. But like, the like all of this was based on like education, common universities, ideas flowing freely between people. It led to the collapse of the Catholic Church, like on top of people, and the Lutheran Revolution, and like in Germany, and Martin Luther nailing that thing to the door, and like it created growth. And then how do empires destroy themselves? They destroyed themselves by going
eliminating academia is a big one, right?
Eliminating academia in order to get a more compliant population that's more into religiosity. You limit like lower like education, and then like make these like people who believe the earth is flat, and like
force people into rigid roles in society that do not acknowledge the truth of humanity, which is that we're all individuated and have our own individual perspectives, and that all of society is served best when everyone gets to express the little things that make them different than everyone else. That's actually the truth of humanity.
So, yeah, that is actually the truth of humanity. And I think that what we have, and like, so like what, like the part that, so it seems like it's like, are we having backlash to the Enlightenment right now? Is it like a 600-year timeline?
You ask Michael Knowles, who said that the Enlightenment was a mistake, and we need to go back to the 1100s to form a new foundation of Western culture. So
exactly. So that's what it's not like they're trying to go back to
the 1950s. No.
The 1750s, right? Because even then, the king wasn't able to like decide by fiat what happened after the Magna Carta.
They want to erase their own cultural success. That's what it is,
right? Like it's like rage, right? And like rage. Like basically, we're rage quitting the world.
Yeah. And with that, we should probably end it there. Rage quit our own podcast. Out of what's happening right now. Any final thoughts?
I mean, yeah, things are bad. Things are a lot, but like, I don't know, people. I mean, like things like all the numbers are looking like numbers, but like people not trusting him on economy, people getting worried about that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's an opportunity there is an opportunity to come into this space and really start setting an agenda for what the forward is, and it's up to you. It's up to the people that are watching, or like all 18 of you, and like it's up to the people that it's Americans. Like we can't depend on like elected leaders, and like they weren't the ones that like led us in the revolution. It wasn't the governors or whatnot of like that are appointed by the colonies. It was Samuel Adams. It was John Hancock. It was like all these people. I'm a masshole, so like I'm partial to the Massachusetts revolutionaries.
Yeah,
but
yeah, and I'll just say also that those of you who've been loyal watchers of this podcast with our tiny little audience, we are looking into which guests we're going to have on to start expanding the footprint a little bit, and so you can enjoy imagining who we're going to bring on as we move this forward. So we're looking forward to that, sharing that with you all too.
That'd be great.
All right, cool. Talk to you all soon.
All right, later, guys.
Bye.